This video was motivated by the Star Trek Enterprise episode of Singularity, which I have just discussed on this very channel. While working on that, I realized I had so much to say about its structure that it seemed to make more sense to spin it off into this companion video. Now, why am I even discussing this at all? Well, Singularity employs a storytelling technique that is cliché, often overdone, and done badly. I should note it's not especially serious in this case. I'm not picking on it because it's so bad or anything. Rather, it presents such a convenient opportunity to delve into this that I thought, why don't we take advantage of what's been handed to us and really explore this style of storytelling and a similar style of storytelling and see what we can perhaps glean from that. There are two similar but nevertheless distinct ways that you can start a work: the flash forward and in medias res. To understand the distinction, you must first distinguish between where the work starts and where the story starts. The first page, the first scene, that's where the work starts. But where the story starts is determined by what the story of the work is. In the case of in medias res, the work and the story start in the same place. In a flash forward, the story doesn't start at the beginning of the work. But before I go any further, let me just clarify that, yes, in medias res actually means in the middle. It's referring to the fact that the story is already in progress when we join it. What I'm saying when I refer to where does your story start, I mean where does the story as the work is telling it start? It is an important thing to note because it's the whole reason that it is in medias res. The film is dropping you into a story that is already in progress. So consequently, it will present you with things in order to get you caught up. With a flash forward, you are getting a glimpse of the future before the actual story starts. But the past before the flash forward is the story. In medias res is about catching up the audience on where they have joined in. Flash forward is about giving a glimpse of where the story is going. Here's the point to keep in mind. To follow the story, the audience needs context for where the story starts. This is because they must be able to follow what is happening. And what is happening is determined by context. The audience doesn't need context for the flash forward because they're not following the flash forward, they're following the story. When the story catches up to the flash forward, it will be in context already. Take what might seem like two similar films on the surface, as far as the technique goes. Obviously, they couldn't be more different. Forrest Gump and Goodfellas. Both stories very quickly travel back to the childhood of the protagonist, true. But in the case of Forrest Gump, that's because it's in his childhood where the story of the film begins. And the scenes on the bus stop bench are where the story is going. In Goodfellas, the events of Henry Hill's childhood contextualize his present situation of having to get rid of a dead body that it turns out wasn't dead until they finished that job. The story isn't about getting to that point, it's about where the story goes from there. In Goodfellas, the past is context for the present. In Forrest Gump, the past is really actually the story, and the bus stop bench is the future. The journey to that bench is the point. Whereas Goodfellas, the story isn't about joining organized crime. It's about everything that comes with being in organized crime. The lifestyle is the point. That lifestyle is the story. Anything said about the current situation or the past is only to give Henry Hill's life as a gangster context. Now, this isn't to say that a flash forward must have absolutely no context whatsoever. Fight Club, for instance, provides several pieces of information about the plan with the bombs. Yet what is key about it is every bit of information you get in Fight Club's flash forward is there only to make you wonder even more how we're going to get to that point. Having established all that, let's get back to Singularity. And you can probably already see the mistake given what we've just talked about. The episode is clearly a flash forward. It's about where we're going. But T'Pol keeps giving context, which is what should be for in medias res. This is not me nitpicking a writing error. It's to illustrate that the story has chosen to play golf and brought along a baseball bat. It has brought the wrong tool for the job. There is certainly a reason that the story begins with a look at the future, because the future is the only place where tension and peril are for this story. If you were to tell it ab ovo, there is nothing bad happening and no ominous hints. The teaser would lack any kind of hook at all. This, by the way, is the reason that the flash-forward start is a cliche, because it's such a powerful and easy tool. Because in your story, eventually there is going to be some kind of conflict, and it means all the more when it is taken out of context. Ergo, there's always something that a writer can grab from their work that they can toss to the beginning to give them a big, powerful opening and a little bit of mystery to it. However, its overuse and its inability to be done well has caused it to be regarded as a negative cliche. Consider the use of 3D in the film Dread from 2012 that we recently discussed. They went to great lengths to really use the 3D properly. However, because 3D had been done by so many other works poorly, the fact that Dread did 3D well didn't really make much of a difference. People still had 3D overload. The same kind of thing should be thought of with the flash-forward opening. Because so many have done it, and done it poorly, if you're going to do it, you better do it very well and hope that people are going to be willing to go along with you and not simply dismiss it outright. Because it can be done well. Fight Club did it well. Forrest Gump did it well. Breaking Bad frequently did it well. Singularity, on the other hand, didn't do it well. Singularity begins with the Enterprise flying at a black hole. It shows us all the crew are passed out. Then T'Pol gives on and gives us some narration, and then we go to the titles. This structure, in my not-so-humble opinion, is a mistake. One of the hardest things to do when you are creating a work is to interrogate yourself over it. Often it just feels right, that's why we do it. But what should be asked, especially when you start to tread on dangerous ground like an overexposed cliche, is ask, why am I doing this specific thing? Why am I employing a flash forward in this Enterprise episode? Because there is no way that an ab ovo start of my story can create a hook. Okay, that's an acceptable reason to use it. So what goes in it? Crew passed out. Why am I doing that? It shows they are helpless. Good point. Ship flying towards black hole. Why am I doing that? It shows there is a threat while they are helpless. Complements the last point. Good. T'Pol appears, conscious, saying they sent a distress signal, but help won't arrive in time. Why am I doing that? To say no one is going to help. This is providing context, and context should be there to increase mystery of how we got into this situation. This should not be here. Yes, it implies a great peril, but we already know they're in peril. It's redundant. She says the crew is in mortal peril. Why am I doing this? No good reason. Again, it is redundant. This shouldn't be here. She says the crew may not survive even if the ship doesn't break up. Why am I doing this? It indicates the black hole is not the only threat. That does increase mystery of how we got here. The very presence of T'Pol. Why am I doing this? To have someone say those things. But it comes at the cost of revealing T'Pol is unaffected, decreasing mystery. In the balance, the presence of T'Pol costs far more than is gained, and the story would be better without it. Remember, the story is not starting here. If it had been, meaning that the story is of T'Pol's efforts to deal with an out-of-control ship and a passed-out crew who are in peril from more than just a black hole, then this would be in medias res, and the information providing context would be good. Hence why I say it has brought the wrong tool for the job, because the story is actually about the deterioration of the crew as the radiation causes monomania. To be clear, this is merely an unforced error. It's not a fatal flaw. this episode is harmed very little as a work by its presence. But the very fact this mistake is related to a move that has become an overdone cliché, and it's the first thing that you encounter, it could also make the viewer flip away the moment the screen fades to black. If I may include a cliché of my own, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Penny Arcade had an amusing comic about the fact that a sci-fi book mentions hyperpigs very early. You gotta ease me into a hyperpig, dude. You can't hit a mofo with hyperpigs on page 1. Not to debate the merits of that case, but the reaction image of him putting down the book and getting up to leave is the thing to remember. Even if people don't analyze something, the tools are there because the work is for the audience, and you need everything to stop them from changing the channel, putting down the book, or exiting out of the stream to something else. That thing about just feeling right goes both ways, and the tools are there so that for the audience, the work feels right, and they want to see where you plan to take them. See that what you have to tell them is worth the investment of time and attention that you are asking for. Of course, it's entirely possible that you have come up with a means to use the tool in a new way, something no one has ever done before, or at least not often. Forrest Gump is one where the flashforward is employed differently, serving more as a peek into the protagonist's mind and how he sees the world, rather than as a glimpse into the future. You don't have to be a slave to the tools. Maybe using a broom instead of a shovel to get the snow off your sidewalk really is the right move. But if you do decide to do it, it should be because you've asked yourself, why am I doing this? And you have a good answer to give. That's where new ground is broken after all. But you should learn how to paint what you see first, so that you'll understand how to paint what you feel.